welcome to this episode of Voice of Workers. And then we start by appreciating all of us for taking time to watch our previous episode, engaging our platforms. And I know you do this because of the bright smile that Pedro brings to your screen.
I try my best. Also, to let you know that we now have our episodes available on Spotify. So, for those of you who may not have the time to sit and watch on YouTube, kindly get our Spotify links in the broadcast messages we send. And please listen on Spotify. It is less time consuming. You can play at your own speed while you also do other things.
Yes.
During the time.
You can listen on Spotify while you're driving, while you're walking, while you're sleeping on your bed, while you're cooking, or while you are doing something else I don't want to talk about.
That is not our business.
All right. So today we have an interesting guest in the house. I don't know, maybe to scream, shout. So what should you do?
For those of you watching for the first time, my name is Amolola Pedro. I know Juwon does not like me, and sometimes he forgets that I have a name.
That you exist, Abby.
Yes. My name is Amolola Pedro, and this is Juwon Sanyaolu, the one who is privileged to be hosting this podcast with me. Say thank you now.
You're sitting right beside me.
Say thank you.
Okay. Next episode.
This is why we don't help people. This is why people don't used to help people. No problem.
All right. So we have an important guest in the house.
Very important.
Very, very important guest. Is more than just a lawyer. As a matter of fact, I think the first time I heard of someone was trying to describe him to me when I was a university student, and they said, you don't know that man that looks like Karl Marx. So in case if you have not met Karl Marx before, we're about to show you Karl Marx in Nigeria.
And when you see this our guest, you already have an idea of what Karl Marx looked like.
Exactly.
When he
was alive. None of us got to meet Karl Marx.
Or whatever.
All right, so he's a labor scholar. As a matter of fact, I think he had published over 100, if I'm not even undermining the number, but he has published a lot of publications, scholarly publications, over 100 of them. And he's a lawyer, particularly a labor lawyer. And most importantly, he's one of, when you heard that people fought and displaced military regime, we can't, in fact, he's one of those leaders at the time who was jailed. I think Babangida jailed him. Abacha did too. I'm sure when you meet him, you are going to have
and apart from being a lawyer and a scholar and all of this, he was also a lecturer.
Yes.
And then you try to imagine how people are able to do all of this,
combine so many things at the same time, academic,
especially considering their experience in the hands of I don't want to say crazy before they ban this podcast.
There's so many one time this, one time
that.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Barrister, revolutionary,
Karl Marx,
Aborisade,
Femi. It's not the kind of Femi that you people know.
No, not those kind of Femi. It's not the social media Femi.
No, that kind of Femi. This Femi is different. Femi. Aborisade.
Oh, okay. We should clap at me.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Nice to meet you. So nice to have you.
Thank you so much for coming, comrade.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this is the first time I'll be meeting comrade. Yes, because before now, I see him on flyers, I see him on graphic designs, I see his name pop up in a lot of conversations, but this is the first time I'll be meeting him in person. So thank you so much for coming. I mean, if you had not come today, who knows when I would have met you.
And you've been hearing the name.
Right.
And I'm also privileged to be meeting you for the first time.
You can hear.
It's a privilege.
It's privilege. For you are proud.
And there's no problem.
I've known Juwon for some time, so I'm not meeting him for the first time.
It's not even a privilege that you met him. It's not a privilege.
But he has also inspired me by his commitment, his
thank
courage, his
thank
participation in protest.
Thank you so much, Sayesi.
So it's an inspiration.
You see,
Privilege and inspiration. Which one is more? I'll check comment section to see which one is
Which
more.
one is more?
I know it's privilege. I know
Yeah.
it's privilege.
As a nepo baby, where you be, Abi?
Lapo baby. Oh. Let's go right
All
into
right.
it.
Yes. So, sir. In the course of a number of research about you, it was said that you were, as a matter of Babangida jailed you. I think Abacha did that. As a matter of fact, it was during one of your prison experience, actually formed the basis for the foundation of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, for instance. But what we really want to ask that your the periods when you were being persecuted by the military, did it at any time inform your trajectory into the labor movement? So yeah, we want to have a clue about that.
No, not at all. All my life, I've always been an advocate of the rights of labor. Uh, I've always had an orientation towards the trade union movement through my interaction with Comrade Olaone, who exposed me and my colleagues, my own generation, to the ideas of Marxism. So it's not detention, it's not persecution at all. It's just my own orientation by the luck I had in coming across people like Comrade Olaone.
Wow.
So you're saying you've always had it in you
Yes,
way
yes,
before
exactly,
the prison
exactly,
experience.
So it was more or less like
exactly.
the prison experience just kind of solidified your conviction and right?
Yes, when I say solidified, prison experience will not solidify my convictions. My convictions led to the prison experience,
That's
and
dialectics. That's very
my
dialectical.
prison experience did not break me. Some others, unfortunately, could not cope. I remember I had a friend who was detained briefly for a few days because we were using his home address, yeah, for the postal box we were using. We were operating semi-illegally. And I was the editor of Labor Militant, so they picked him and he said he had nothing to do with the publication. He actually did, but in order to safeguard his own job as a federal worker, we already planned. If they come for you, say you have nothing to do with the publication, this is the person. So he mentioned me as it worked out. They released him within a few days and took me on. And unfortunately, that experience contributed to his losing his sanity. Because he started seeing in any other person he didn't know before, he started seeing security, the SSS, in that person. And within a short while, he lost his life. And I was able to cope. I was able to cope. For example, in my statement to the SSS, if some of them who interrogated me alive, they would testify. I wrote that unless they killed me, I would never stop what I was doing.
Wow.
And that if I don't do what, if I didn't do what I was doing, no other person would do it.
Wow.
Now
So-
imagine if I can write that.
And that was under the military. So
Wow. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I want to move straight to uh, you know your your expertise in labor law. Recently, I was reading through a news about what Dr. Piona, I think he's now a professor, the ASU president. They were talking about the possibility of embarking on a strike action over some of the demands, but of course, some of what had been, it's always a familiar practice with federal government or government at any level for that matter to use the instrumentality of no work, no pay. against to
against striking workers.
against striking workers. So, what? How do you how do you respond to this?
Well, no strike, no pay is actually the provision of the law.
No work, no
About
pay.
no work, no
It's a
pay
provision of
is
the
a
law.
provision of the law. So it's not strange if any court or that the court applied it. It is a provision of the law. It is only the context of in the context of ASU strike. I think it was wrong for that provision to be applied because under Section 30 sub 6 of the Trade Unions Act, a strike will be valid, will be legally allowed if the strike is over dispute of right or a breach of collective agreement. In the context of ASU's strike, then when it was applied, they were striking for the enforcement or implementation of a collective agreement they had signed since 2009. In that context, the strike to enforce or implement, to put pressure on government to implement the agreement, could be regarded as a dispute of right or a dispute arising from a breach of the collective agreement over which a strike is permitted under Section 30 sub 6 of the Trades Unions Act. So in that context, it is modified, allowed, no work, no pay. Of course, it also depends on the balance of forces. I remember the medical doctors, National Association of Resident Doctors, when they embarked on a strike a few years ago, I was involved along with Comrade Femi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, in the litigation then. And the court ordered them to go back to work, and the doctors, refused. They said they were prepared to go through the consequences, to bear the consequences, that they had been pushed to the wall. As a result of their commitment and their preparedness to defy the order, government as the federal government as the employer, their employer, had to concede to their demands. They did not insist.
Even in the face of a court ruling.
Yes, they did not insist that they should be sent, to prison. But they told us that they were prepared to go to prison if it was necessary. So that was the level of commitment that told government, no, with this set of, doctors or workers, we cannot push further. We have to concede. So, and government, considered on some of the demands then. So it all depends on the balance of forces. It is not always that the employer is able to enforce no work, no pay. Particularly, workers in Nigeria usually embark on strike as a last resort, arising from failure of the employer to implement collective agreements. So they know that they are at fault. And in that context, there are also other judicial precedents, that allow strikes being used to enforce collective agreements. Otherwise, if it's not a breach of collective agreement, if it's not a dispute of right, the law is no work, no pay.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was very insightful, because left to me, I would have just said that in whatever context it was wrong. It was not supposed to be so. Thank you so much for that enlightenment. So moving on, there is a trend, particularly in the banking industry, oil and gas industry, and other industries like that, where we have workers who work full time, like expected of a worker, but they are not are entitled to benefits that workers should get in the name of contract
Work
staff.
staffs, yes.
They call them contract staff. There's a lot of them in the banking industry. As a
In
matter of fact,
telecommunications
an
too, yeah.
average branch of a banking institution has 80% or even 90% contract
Contract
staff.
staff.
And as such, these contract staff do not get the same benefits like the other workers that they call their full-time staff, but they work at the same rate or even do more than those people. So we are witnessing the informalization of workers, where they are referred to as informal workers. And they also do not get to belong to trade unions because, of course, they are not regarded as
Regular
food.
workers.
Yes, as regular workers. What is the perspective of the labor union on this, or are there any labor laws that speaks to this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think to follow up,
Yeah.
that's from highlighting specific labor law that speaks to this. How do you think trade unions need to respond to this growing trend of labor casualization?
Thanks very much. That's a very good question. The challenge is for the labor movement to resist deunionization, of workers, particularly in the banking industry. The trend has been on for a long time, and it's a violation of Convention number 87 of the ILO, International Labour Organization Convention, the right to organize. It's a violation, and there's no basis for it. But those who accept such contracts do so not because they enjoy it,
Of
but
course.
they are compelled to accept it. Yeah, it ought not to be, and it's the larger trade union movement that can take on such a challenge. It's the right of unionism is a fundamental convention of the ILO, which every worker is entitled to, whether permanent, casual, or whatever. It's a fundamental right to which any worker is entitled. But employers will not willingly, allow it. Workers have to resist, and those workers, as individuals, they are marginalized. They lack power. It's the trade union movement that ought to give them support to ensure that it is terminated. We put an end to it.
So, comrade, for those who work in, like, there was a time we were discussing the people who work in petrol stations, fuel attendants,
Yeah.
hotel receptionists, waiters, and waitresses. These people, I do not think there is an existing union for people like that yet, but we have witnessed the experiences of people who work in these sectors, including the low payments and the way they are being treated in those workspaces, including the lack of protection of their
Yeah.
own dignity
Yeah.
and human rights, such that you can walk into a bar and because you have bought 2 bottles of wine, you are entitled to sexually harass a waitress, and everybody thinks it's
It's okay.
just normal. So these waitresses, there is no union they can run to because at this moment there's no union that represents how do I put it now, their own reality. How do we go about forming up unions like this for this category of people, fuel attendants, receptionists, hotel waitresses and waiters and all of that?
On the contrary, There are unions that cover them. Nupeng, for example, is entitled by law, the Trade Unions Act, the jurisdictional scope of Nupeng covers the petrol attendants. Whether or not particular petrol attendants in particular places are now union members is a different matter, but they are entitled to join Nupeng. Hotel and personal services workers union covers, the hotel industry. They are entitled. The issue is whether that particular union has been able to unionize particular hotels. So they are entitled by law. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. The unions of
We
which
have
they ought to,
existing
yes,
unions
that
for
cover
them.
them statutorily.
And these unions are also, of course, supposed to fight for their rights and
Yes,
protect their
exactly,
dignity.
exactly.
So what we have
Exactly.
witnessed is that some of these unions have not.
There's
They
a
should be
lack of
encouraged.
awareness,
They should be
a gap
encouraged
in communication.
to unionize the ununionized workers who are entitled to be their members. And when they do this, they will also increase the source of their income. Because the moment a worker is a member of a union, he or she will be paying check-off dues, union dues. So the union should be encouraged to unionize the ununionized workers that are entitled by law to be their members.
So yeah, so that means if you are a petrol attendant and hotel receptionist watching this show,
A waiter,
A
waitress at a bar, a beer parlor, a club, you work in a lounge, whatever you can
you have a
name it,
union.
there's a union for you. So you don't have to endure those things because, of course, what are you supposed to do? There's a union that exists for you. For fuel attendants, there is Nupeng for you. You can walk into any Nupeng state office
Yes, and
show
register to
interest.
be a union member.
And yes, and register to be a union member. Being a part of a union also helps because if you notice, you will see that they are part of the most underpaid people.
Very underpaid.
Very, very underpaid.
Very underpaid.
As in year 2025, people are being paid 20,000 naira.
As a petrol attendant.
Yes, as salaries. A full
And that's why
month's
people
work.
then complain that those people don't sell the
It's
petrol.
not full. Or then they complain that they are begging for tips.
Exactly.
Because I mean they are being paid peanuts, including the ones who work in these other places. So
The
please,
challenge, however, which we must stress, is that for enterprises in the private sector, as we have pointed out earlier in the case of the banks, particularly the small enterprises, they are not happy with their workers being unionized. The moment workers in those sectors, in those enterprises, indicate interest in joining, the tendency is to sack them. And workers are afraid they don't want to lose their job. That is the problem that we face. So we need government, to enforce the law and insist that there's dignity in labor. Those that are engaged, employed by employers, are entitled, to be unionized. And enterprises that are not ready to allow their workers to be unionized should be closed down. So we need a government that would stand on that would not tolerate employers, discouraging or intimidating their workers when they indicate interest in joining unions.
But how
That
do
is the
we
challenge
achieve this,
that we
comrade?
face.
Yeah.
How do we achieve this?
That is the experience. That is the experience that workers face.
That particularly leads me to the next question. Because it is in the bid to, actually ensure that at least there is a government that does represent the interest of workers. Is part of the basis. The trade unions, I think, sometimes in 1989, had made several efforts, especially in the 80s, to organize workers into political parties. But away from that, there are certain laws and I would need you to clarify on that generally prohibits workers, from uh,
Being politically.
being involved in political party affairs, as say, it's including even civil, even civil servants. So, what is your view on this, and how do you think the trade unions and civil society can challenge this trend of depriving workers their right to franchise, because at least the right to be voted
Vote
for.
and be voted for.
Their right to vote necessarily is not even going to be, but their right to exercise, to be voted for, which is one important part of the right to franchise. So, what's your view on this, and how do you think the trade unions and civil society can respond to this anomaly?
Especially considering the fact that if we want a union that would take workers' interest, a government that would take workers' interest seriously, then we must have a government where workers are a part of.
Yeah.
I mean, if workers are involved in the governance of their country, they are also able to make contributions that would benefit them. So when we now have this kind of law where workers are prohibited from participating in politics,
Yes.
it brings us to ground zero.
First of all, let me correct the impression that there is any law that prohibits workers from being members of political parties or from contesting. There is no such law anywhere. No such law anywhere. In 2003, I contested to be governor of Oyo State. I was then lecturing in the Polytechnic Ibadan. And the INEC made guidelines excluding civil servants. And that was one of the grounds that we challenged in the case that we filed then. That case is INEC versus Ballot Musa. And the Supreme Court held that by virtue of Section 40 of the Constitution, the word in Section 40 is any person is entitled to the right of association, any person, including civil servants, public officers. So there is no basis for excluding them. So the Supreme Court has settled that. And that was included in challenging INEC guidelines then. It was included on the basis of my
Candidacy.
Candidacy.
Wow.
As a public officer contesting to be governor of Oyo State. INEC was not satisfied, appealed, and the Supreme Court,
So the case is settled.
It has been said, no law, on the basis of the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, that is the apex court of the land, it has made a final pronouncement. It has settled that. Politicians in government merely use it to intimidate workers.
And
there are other cases where the courts have held that civil servants are persons, they have the right under the Constitution to be members of political parties and to contest. The only provision in the Constitution is the requirement of having to resign 30 days before the date of election. Now, that would naturally discourage many workers who may not be sure that they will win the election, and if they have resigned, it may be difficult, going back, to work. So what we need to do, what the labor movement ought to do, what any progressive-looking government ought to do, if they're actually progressive, is to advocate and implement policies that will say, workers, if you want to contest, you merely take leave of absence. So that if you lose, you go back, or after the tenure of your service, you can go back to your work. But no law prohibits, the civil service rules, tend to prohibit it. But with the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, in the case of INEC versus Barabe Musa, in that case, at the lower court, I was the deponent who deposed to the affidavit.
That's quite interesting. So, which means that the 30 days resignation or the requirement for resignation before contesting is is a systemic alienation of workers for participating in the political process.
Deliberate, exclusive policy measure to exclude, workers.
Workers.
Wow.
Of course, nobody wants to go and lose in the election and come return jobless at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not the same for private business owners, because as a business owner, you are able to do your business and still be involved in
Yeah.
politics. So whether or not you emerge, you can always go back
Yeah.
to your business.
Yeah.
It's really and that's why platforms like this are very commendable, because you're able to correct a lot of misinformation and provide new information to the people. As a matter of fact, I never knew that was the case. My thought has always been that as a civil servant or as a public office holder, you are not expected, or like there's a law that says don't contest in elections. So,
It's a
thank you so
misperception being encouraged by politicians in power. No such law.
Of course, an attempt to keep their opponents further.
Exactly.
To
exactly.
keep politics away from the ordinary people.
Of course.
All right, well, it's been an interesting conversation.
Yes.
So far, brilliantly interesting, I must say. I had to. I know you are the English person. I know you want to correct me.
No, it's fine. You can
fine.
go on.
All right. So yes, we've heard it, and at this point, let me leave it to you to do the closing remarks. You seem to be better off at that.
Later, you will not appreciate me for the good things I'm doing in his
Well,
life.
I appreciate the next episode. I appreciate you.
Like you have heard, for every kind of job you do, there's a union for you. So please make efforts at being a unionized worker. Don't just be a worker whose rights get trampled upon. Also, kindly like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like we mentioned earlier, we now have a Spotify account, and with this, you are also able to listen to us and do other things that you can do. Thank you so much for watching this episode. We are hoping that you would watch this episode, and we want to see an increase in
Yes,
viewership.
increase in viewership.
Please, our guest is not a beg person. We don't want to be seeing 10 views,
Or
or
else-
20 views.
We will not come back to this show again.
You may think we are threatening you, but yes, we are threatening you. Thank you so much for watching us from Juwon and I.
Bye.
Bye.